Surprise, surprise, it's Caleb Williams 101 who goes to a team that only had Gardner Minshew and Aaron Rodgers as their quarterbacks before this draft started. I think it's an easy A plus if you want to throw the A pluses out there at nauseum. It's a great pick, okay? You're talking about a guy in Caleb Williams that is no stranger to being now a top six, top seven quarterback in the dynasty landscape, a franchise changing player for the Bears, hopefully in real life, but absolutely a franchise cornerstone asset for your dynasty team. At the 102 here, it's Marv, and for me, this is a B plus. It's a B plus, still an awesome player, awesome prospect. I get that. At the end of the day, I value quarterbacks, and for me, in this case, I would have opted for personally Drake May as my quarterback too. I could understand even Jane Daniels, the argument to be made there, and only 4 point per pass touchdown, especially. At the end of the day, this team, who drafted in their earned spot, so to speak, bit of a struggle, obviously, in 2023, but got in the position to pick at the 102. And you're talking about a team that only had Anthony Richardson as their quarterback, effectively, with a bunch of backups around that. At receiver, they're already a stable of really nice Pukas, Garrett Wilsons, Tank Dells, JSNs, guys that are already effectively filling a bulk of your starting slots. Obviously, there's certainly room for Marvin Harrison there, but for me, with only Anthony Richardson really, I want a quarterback too, a quarterback 1B arguably in the long term. I'm shooting for that potential. I'm shooting for the upside. Jaden Daniels here at the 103. Kirk, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud at the quarterback position. So honestly, this is where you arguably are holding too much room at quarterback, too much value there. Again, this is a B plus for me. We're talking about T-Law and Stroud firmly being those starters. I know at a certain point you don't want to ignore the value, but when guys are grouped in such relative tier or tiers, depending on how you want to look at it, but for me, similarly valued players, I would have rather flipped. Obviously, you didn't have the chance to draft Marv, so that's one thing. But honestly, I would have heavily considered a Malik Neighbors in this spot. Or Dunze if you really like the Bears and their landing spot with Caleb. I can't fault you there. At the end of the day, we're talking about a team that had quarterbacks already there, already really surplus value with three decent, two high end, and then a really decent QB3. And we're talking about a wide receiver room that only really has Brandon Ayuk and Devontae Smith. Some other guys in Addison and Jerry Jeudy, DK Metcalf. I mean, decent middling wide receivers that are outside of your traditional quarterback one territory. I mean, Ayuk is obviously on the fringe there, but I want the guy in Malik Neighbors, especially, who is already a top 10 receiver in Dynasty for good reason. He has a Garrett Wilson type season, for example, I think is very possible. Obviously, New York, it's not going to be the best quarterback play, or so we think. You're talking about a guy that is going to retain wide receiver one status in the Dynasty landscape by performing at a level he's absolutely capable of, and frankly, I expect him to. And important with these values and these grades, what if they make trades? What if they make trades? What is their next move? I can only speculate. I can only judge based off what's in front of me. What you then do is totally up to you, and that can shape or justify, make or break your team and its future as a contender or rebuilder for who knows how long. But nonetheless, with what you currently have and the fact that trading, well, it's not like the New York Stock Exchange. We're not talking about frenetic, every hour type deals. So at the end of the day, I question why load up on value that you're not really going to be able to realize in even a starting format and get the points. Malik Neighbors here, again, we're talking about positional conundrums. The decision to go for a receiver, yet again, the last three picks just would have flipped position targets in terms of this case, Malik Neighbors adding to a receiver room. But at the end of the day, you could have added to a quarterback room with a Drake May, who obviously I've already proclaimed my belief in him and his upside. You're talking about only Daniel Jones and Bryce Young as your quarterbacks. Plus, if you want to include Aiden O'Connell, that's just not the strongest quarterback room whatsoever. That is my philosophy of building around quarterbacks if it's not already clear. And for me, I just want to get effectively my QB1 of my team. You're talking about as it stands and who you have currently. I know Malik Neighbors. I love him. He's, again, they're all jumbled in this relative tier. At a certain point, you've got to prioritize what makes sense given the context of your team, of your league, in a superflex format. I just don't love opting to add Malik Neighbors to a receiving room that already has Jamar Chase that also was primed to pick several times frequently in the later of the first round throughout round two to add to your receiver depth. It just doesn't quite make the most sense to me. So this for me, it's a B plus because at a certain point I'm recognizing the underlying player and I think their value and what they pose to you. But I think it could just been otherwise spent in a better manner for the top of the draft for these cornerstone type picks. Rome Odunze here at the 105. You're talking about a team that already had a pretty decent quarterback set up with Goff and with Josh Allen. So I can understand passing up a Drake May in this case. As much as I love Drake May, I can understand it when you get a chance to add Rome Odunze to a receiver room that frankly isn't the greatest. I mean, you have a Drake London and you've got Stephon Diggs. So two notable players. But I just absolutely understand the need to add a Rome Odunze, a caliber player who is effectively your long-term wide receiver one, arguably right up there with a Drake London. So for me, this pick is an A. Drake May here at a 106. He goes to a team that only had Tua and Baker. That's it in terms of any quarterbacks on the roster. Tua and Baker. Not even rostering backups, potential starters, plug and play guys throughout the course of a year, which I think it's honestly it's fair. It's smart in multiple formats, constructed really well in that sense. I love Drake May here. You're talking about now 3 quarterbacks you insure on your roster, but the top 2 already, obviously Baker just got the contract. Who knows exactly how he looks in 2024? Who knows how Tua, hopefully playing into a contract, looks as well. So adding Drake May here to that quarterback room, I absolutely love the pick. This is for me an A, as 101 was, as Caleb Williams was, effectively an A plus. I love this pick. You're talking about a team that has some running backs in terms of potential production, potential depth. Obviously, you've got Derrick Henry, who's a win now type guy. Aaron Jones as well. Got David Montgomery there. Kyron Williams, Bijan. A lot of running backs and not incredible receivers, given obviously that running back strength there. Especially love Drake May at the 106. At the 107 here, we're back to the team that picked 101, who talking about a team that got an A plus grade for a pick they made. For me, this is another solid A minus type going JJ McCarthy here at the 107. Obviously, people speculate on the type of immediate production. Is he going to really support a Jefferson and Addison, a Hockenson once he returns? That remains to be seen. Both JJ McCarthy and his upside, I really like the pick here. I like the swing. You're talking about quarterback that went top 10 of the NFL draft, and now you add Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy through the first 7 picks, really solidifying the future of your quarterback room. Love this pick. 108, we're talking about Brian Thomas here. Brian Thomas goes to a team that effectively has some decent quarterbacks for sure in Lamar and Jordan Love, who's got Will Levis as well. Running back just doesn't figure in at this point anyway, this high in your drafts, or at least it shouldn't, depending on the format, obviously. That's unique to your league, but they're already set at the running back position. Guys like A-Chain, Shad White, Pollard, Cook, a lot of guys there. At receiver, though, Thomas adding to Keenan Allen, Debo, Zay Flowers, and that's about it. So receiver was absolutely the pick and the way to go here with Brian Thomas Jr. I think effectively, immediately almost can emerge as the wide receiver one for Trevor Lawrence. And obviously people love Trevor Lawrence, and for good reason, maybe just unjust to the degree that people value Trevor Lawrence in your leagues. There's a really varying spectrum, I feel like. But nonetheless, Brian Thomas, talk about opportunity and a receiver position that you absolutely need here. This is absolutely an A pick for me. Moving on to the 109, which happens to be yours truly. So I will abstain from grading my pick, the bias therein. I will provide justification, though, for me opting for a Bo Nix here. Bo Nix, I'm taking the swing. I believe in the player. The context of my team, I have a Mahomes and Dak covering my quarterback and superflex position. So I don't necessarily need Bo Nix, but in a sense, I want that insurance policy. I want a guy who is absolutely going to be able to start early in his rookie year, potentially realize some upside, be bit of a golden ticket to me, in a sense, to really produce potential future gains that I could turn into in a multitude of different trades, a multitude of teams that maybe need a quarterback. I can potentially capture on that value. Could I have added a receiver like a Worthy or a McConkey or a Coleman? I could have considered it, but for me, Bo Nix here, 12th overall quarterback in a superflex format that's going to be able to start and provide, look, several opportunities throughout the course of the season where I'm going to need to start somebody else given buys, injuries, who knows what. That was just the swing for me to take here. I've got already Amon-Ra, I've got Chris Olave, so my receiver room not totally lacking talent in that sense. It was always the pick here for me going Bo Nix. Brock Bowers, you see he goes after me, but for me, I've already got Sam Laporta. So I love Brock Bowers, and he's effectively, again, he's in this tier with a Bo Nix and some others, but with Bo Nix, the positional need for me and the upside outweighs Brock Bowers, and obviously we're talking only start one tight end. So Sam Laporta, I've already got tight end one. Speaking of Bowers at the 110 here, he goes to the team that picked Jaden Daniels at the 103. And again, for me, it's a little bit of a questionable pick in terms of position given the construct of the team. And at the end of the day, I want to make it clear once again, I love the player in a Brock Bowers. Incredible talent, incredible option here. But when you look at the receiver room, how they passed up on the chance to draft Malik Neighbors at the 103 and then said opting for Jaden Daniels, you look at with a Brock Bowers, you're passing up the chance to draft a receiver again to add to your room, which only really has middling high end wide receiver twos effectively in Dynasty. Production wise, though, that's a little bit different. Ayuk, Devontae Smith, there's upside there, but I would have rather vision trading down than forcing a Brock Bowers pick here, especially when I also have an Njoku and a Ferguson at my tight end position already. I just don't love opting to ignore receiver with both of these first two picks here in the top 10. I still have to recognize the underlying talent, though, with Bowers. For me, this is a B grade. After going with Malik Neighbors at the 104, this team at the 111 goes with Xavier Worthy. They again choose to ignore the quarterback position when you only have Bryce Young and Daniel Jones. For me, look, maybe it's a hot take, but I'm absolutely considering Michael Penix here at the 111. And you're talking about a guy, Michael Penix, and given the state of this team especially, the arc is not to win anywhere close to now. Anywhere close to now. And so you have, in a way, value insulation there. Not so directly comparable. I don't want to make this so evident in what I'm about to say, but the idea of a Jordan Love trajectory, you don't have to start right away to potentially be extremely relevant and extremely viable as a fantasy option, as a dynasty cornerstone type player in your first couple years. You just don't have to. So with Penix, I would have really loved to go with a Penix to add to this QB room here instead of going with an Xavier Worthy who, look, especially given this team situation at the 201, which we'll get into, they could have gone with a receiver. They could have added there. So I just don't love, once again, ignoring quarterback in this team, in this situation. So for me, this Xavier Worthy pick, it's maybe a hot take, but it's a C plus Xavier Worthy pick at the 111. At the 112, rounding out the first round, the team that goes with Ladd here is the team that also went with Roma Dunze at the 105. And so, once again, we're talking about a team that was really smart, in my view, to go with Roma Dunze at the 105, and they did. And then adding Alad McConkey as well. Love the upside play there. Also, when you already have a Josh Palmer, I love effectively getting a stranglehold, in theory, on some of the top production, a bulk of the production of the implied assumed LA Chargers receiving game in 2024. So really love the move there. Cannot go wrong. For me, that Ladd McConkey pick, given this team situation and the context, that's an A pick for me. We're back to the team that just picked Xavier Worthy. They just got a C plus. They go Jonathan Brooks here at the 201. And look, I love Brooks. I think he is a great option and provides similar, honestly, value insulation effectively in his rookie year, or at least toward the beginning, given people are going to give, I believe, some benefit of the doubt, or at least they should, I think, in some sense, for the recovery from the ACL injury. And you're going to a team that, look, needs a lot of help, all the help it can get. And with Jonathan Brooks, clear RB1, a guy that has receiving upside as well. I like the player. But here at the 201, when you once again ignore the chance to add Michael Penix, it's another C, C plus. I mean, if you, at the end of the day, acknowledging the player that you get here, I just don't like passing on Penix now twice. We're back to the team that drafted Marv at the 102. We're going with Ricky Pearsall here. You passed on the chance to add Michael Penix to a room that, reminder, only really has Anthony Richardson in it. At the end of the day, Pearsall, I don't like taking him over a couple of guys at the receiver position. In particular, it's Keon Coleman for me. It's Keon Coleman over a Pearsall. I'm taking that 10 times out of 10. You opted to go the other route with Ricky Pearsall. I just don't like the pick here at the 202. This, for me, it's a C minus pick. With Ayuk, with Debo, possibly not going anywhere, at least for the next foreseeable 12 months or so. You got to hope one moves, in my view, at the end this time next year where we stand. Because if you don't, and Pearsall has only a 650-yard season for 6 touchdowns, people aren't going to be liking where Pearsall's value lies, or at least the upside, the trajectory, compared to spending a 202 on him in this rookie class. Keon Coleman here at the 203. This is the first pick that this team had. Traded away some picks, maneuvered, somehow got to the 203 here. And with Keon Coleman, for me, this is an A-plus pick. It's an A-plus pick at the receiver position. You're talking about Josh Allen's potential wide receiver 1. Brandon Beane, the GM's already said they're going to be relying on him often and early. Unlike some other guys, well, like Ricky Pearsall that just went before him, how can you ask him that of him when he's got George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey's, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk's in that offense already? Compared to Keon Coleman, there's no one in that receiver room. No one. So love going with Keon Coleman here. Not the best quarterback room. So I would have understood if you went with Penix here. But at the end of the day, they do have a Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson. So they've got starters. And they've got Zach Wilson, Fields. So some upside. A little upside there. Especially I like with Fields. That's a different conversation. I just wouldn't have loved going running back here when you've got Breece Hall, you've got Ken Walker already on your team, and you've got a guy like Najee Harris already, quite a running back crew. But at receiver, you add Keon Coleman to a team that desperately needs receiver. You're talking about only having Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Dotson, Khalil Shakir, George Pickens, John Mechie. That's it. Oh, and then I guess Rashee Rice, throw him in there. But with all the uncertainty there, Keon Coleman, that's an A-plus pick for me. Going back to yours truly here at the 204, where I opt to go with a Trey Benson here. At the end of the day, I saw the value. I believe in him effectively being right with Brooks as far as the tier landscape in this running back class. It is so ugly and brutal for the brunt of these backs and where they were picked, especially with the draft capital for the large part. But with Benson here, top of the 3rd round, effectively 66th overall, meaningful level of investment. And with the team, with James Conner there as the incumbent, it's only guaranteed for 2024. And what is seemingly a guarantee with him, that he's always missing a game or two. And so Benson's going to have opportunity early and often, I believe, to make a statement to potentially become the future of that backfield. So I really had to go Trey Benson here. Again, receiver, I would have loved to get a Keon Coleman, but with how the board shook out, Trey Benson here was the value for me. And having already taken Bo Nix, Penix just didn't quite make sense for my team. Obviously, he's not going to crack immediacy looking like to be that Falcons quarterback, and especially the potential value added to my team with Pat Mahomes and Dak already. At the 205, though, the team that was criticized multiple times already in terms of some of their picks, in terms of scrutiny, getting Michael Penix here, you got lucky in my view with how the board shook out. Or maybe you can say they just played it out really well. I don't know exactly what was in their mind, but you went Pearsall at the 202 and you get Penix here at the 205. That was huge to be able to add Penix to a room that only had Anthony Richardson. So that is, for me, an easy A. It's arguably an A-plus pick. there's baked in value insulation with Penix. There is, and the situation, assuming Cousins just supports and elevates guys like Pitts, like Drake London, like Bijan, they're only going to be entering their true primes by the time Penix is possibly in line to start there. I know it's possibly, that's the key word. There's so much uncertainty, there's so much ambiguity. A lot can change in the NFL. A lot can happen. So Penix, love taking him here at the 205. Adonai Mitchell here at the 206. Adonai Mitchell going to a team that added Caleb at the 101. They added McCarthy at the 107. Adonai Mitchell here at the 206. It's a great pick. It's a wonderful, wonderful pick. A guy that fell a little bit in the NFL draft. And shout out to Chris Ballard. He shut it down. The rumors of character concerns. It's honestly so ridiculous. Other guys seemingly impacted in a variety of ways to differing degrees at differing positions, differing draft capital, of course, but it always happens. It always happens. And for something that, in terms of severity, or at least what's publicly known, it just doesn't make sense to character assassinate a guy like that on one of his biggest nights of his life. Nonetheless, you add a guy in Mitchell to a team that only really had, I say only, but you have Jefferson there. You've got Jay Jettas, solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in Dynasty, and Jaden Reed. You have Jaden Reed there, but adding Adonai Mitchell is a really nice value play. Upside there, I know it's going to be effectively the number 2 to a Michael Pittman Jr. But who knows? Anthony Richardson, we haven't really seen a full sample size or anything close to what he could possibly support in a fantasy sense. It's another A-. Really solid pick. Jalen Polk here at the 207. With Polk, you're talking about a team that added Drake May at the 106, so already incredibly strong start. You're adding now his receiver 1, possibly. Love that pair. Love it. This team, we'll get to it in a second part, in the third, fourth round of another video, but with Jalen Polk, you're talking about a guy that really solid career at Washington, a guy that's not the flashiest, that's not the sexiest option, but with the opportunity and the potential to be a potential dynasty wide receiver 2 as an absolute tip of the upside sphere, in my view, a top, 20 to 24 type option in dynasty, that is solid value. And you're adding him to a room that, in terms of receivers, really old, aging out with McLaurin, who I think is primed to have an awesome year, but I feel like overlooked how old, 28, 29 years old he is. And you've got Kupp, and you've got Lockett, Devontae Adams. This is a solid A. Going back to a team that picked Malik Neighbors, Xavier Worthy, Jonathan Brooks, a team that I've been relatively critical of in terms of the draft thus far. But they get Xavier Legette here at the 208, a guy that could possibly emerge as the number 1 receiver there in Carolina at some point in 2024. I'm not ruling that out. I know there's Deontay Johnson. I know there's, of course, Adam Thielen, who was very fantasy relevant for especially beginning middle part of the 2023 season. With Leggett, he is absolutely a different flavor, a different option in that receiving game. I'm not comparing him at all. I'm talking about in terms of Dave Canales, in terms of how he designs his offenses, how he has targeted players. You look at a guy that's had an awesome year. Once again, it's no different from what we expect with the Mike Evans, obviously. But you think about a guy that could possibly have that type of role, get similar type of volume. I really like what Leggett offers. And here at the 208, you're talking about a guy that goes in the first round of the NFL draft. It is incredible value. This is a solid A pick. Their run continues here. They round out the second round with 2-8 through 2-12. They go Corley, Lloyd, Burton, then Ben Sinnott. So Leggett, love that pick. Corley, not incredibly a fan of him here at the 209. I think we're really banking on him as a value play for especially the next 1 to 2 years because of obviously Aaron Rodgers. So with Garrett Wilson obviously there, Breece Hall, I don't know how much of a force Corley can be in fantasy in terms of a long-term value, but he does have a relevant, pertinent skill set as a yards after the catch guy. So there absolutely is the upside there. For me, I think it's a solid B+ pick. To reiterate, with this team, you only had really Jamar Chase going into this draft at the receiver room, and you addressed it. I can't blame you for doing that, for opting for that strategy. So solid pick, getting Corley here. And you pick up in a couple picks of Jermaine Burton, but focusing in on Marshawn Lloyd here at the 210, I think, look, I initially was a very reactive person on draft night oh my God, he's going to the Packers. There's, of course, Josh Jacobs there. But Josh Jacobs, it's interesting how this potentially plays out with a guy that was inefficient, incredibly inefficient compared to what we saw, and obviously the incredible volume 2 seasons ago. Got volume in 2023, but not so efficient, not the most incredible player to even warrant the Raiders effectively seemingly trying to keep him. So he hits the open market and he gets the crazy deal on the surface. 4 years, 48 million, give or take, 12 per, but really only the first year is a guarantee, or at least the first year after this upcoming 2024 season is a potential opt-out situation for the Packers. Obviously, there would be a cap penalty, but with Lloyd, I like the upside. I like the player here. I think he is effectively, arguably, in his own tier in terms of the running back landscape. And well, look, my consolidated rankings, tiers, and isolation, those will be coming out very soon. With Lloyd, I like the value here in the late second. A guy that, in terms of talent in this running back class, he's up there. He's not in a totally different stratosphere than Brooks and Benson. And with the Packers, it's a competent offense. It's a very intriguing spot on the surface. Initial reaction, oh my God, disgusting. But who's to say he doesn't earn and slowly work into a considerable role with a Josh Jacobs who has had so much tread on the tires up to this point, and who knows if he completely is able to resurge to previous form that we've seen not so recently. With Burton here at the 211, foreshadowed it. I think, look, Burton, it's a solid pick. It's a solid pick with the Bengals. You have to bet some way, potentially T. Higgins. If he's not moved ahead of this year, they're just not going to be able to keep him, I don't think, for 2025. Burton here, potential long-term number 2. You're already held Jamar Chase on this roster. I like getting that firm future hold effectively on the Bengals situation. So I like the pick here with Burton, and to be clear with Lloyd, A minus for me, as is Jermaine Burton. Then Ben Sinnott as well at the 212. We're talking about a guy that, look, people are talking about Sam Laporta comps, how the usage was in college, how the size compares. And look, that is quite enticing. Really can't just ascribe those expectations. I feel like it's just unfair at the end of the day for any rookie, right? I mean, what Laporta did is incredible. You're talking about a team that has Kyle Pitts already on it, but they are holding considerable tight end value, and they also have Michael Mayer, true biggest losers of this draft. With Pitts, though, who knows what exactly happened. So I like getting a young shot upside play at the tight end position there compared to what else is on the board. Could you have gone Troy Franklin? Could you have gone running back? I don't really think that makes sense. In that receiver, I think there's a little bit of a drop off in upside. I mean, Franklin is right there, but Sinnott, look, you already went 5 receivers through your first several picks here. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your current favorite values are in rookie drafts, in your leagues, how it's looking. If you have a pick to make, if you're on the clock, let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found any value at the end of the day, a subscribe, a like goes such a long way, farther than you think. Have a great one. I will see you in the next one.